Welcome, everyone, to the 72 podcast at CLBI in Camrose, Alberta. Out on the prairies, it's a beautiful day, sun shining through this main classroom building in the office building here at 4837 52A Street, Camrose, Alberta, if you want to show up.
It's a famous address.
A famous address.
Yeah.
Welcome to the second series as we journey into this new adventure of a podcast. And this series is going to focus on joining Jesus on his mission. And really, we're going to uncover stories about what Jesus is up to. My name's Ted Hill. I have the privilege of working here at CLBI as the program director, heading into my third year here working with Dean and Kate and Wanda and Jody and Cullen and all kinds of short-term staff. They're absolutely amazing. What a blast it is to work here. I've had the privilege of pastoring for a number of years in the parish, I think 23 years in full-time parish ministry. And I get to be here with Dean. Mm-hmm. Dean is entering his fourth year as the president of CLBI. He is a pastor. He pastored for 11 years here in Camrose at Resurrection Lutheran Brethren, and he was program director at Camp Luther down in the Lower Mainland for 6 years, and also youth director at Messiah Lutheran here in Camrose for a number of years after Bible college, Bible school here at CLBI. Both of us are alumni here at CLBI. And I want to tell you briefly, as an introduction, how important Dean has been to me and influential. And I remember probably about 17, 18 years ago, no, it's more than that, it'd be 20 years ago, when I was in East End, Saskatchewan, you came down and you just showed up. If you ask students, Dean just sort of shows up at the right time when people are going through something. It's a spiritual gift, showing up, sort of like Philip coming alongside the Ethiopian, just showing up and speaking a word of encouragement. And I remember as we shared at my kitchen table in East End, Saskatchewan, as I shared some of my struggles and joys, and he spoke a word of affirmation, and specifically Zephaniah 3:17. He spoke over me, and that has been influential to me ever since. And Zephaniah 3:17 is, "The Lord your God is with you. He is mighty to save. He will take great delight in you. He will quiet you with his love, and he will rejoice over you with singing." Extraordinary truth. And I think from that moment on, I realized Dean is my pastor. Pastors need pastors.
We do.
We do. And now we get to work together.
Yeah.
What a gift. So thanks for all the conversations and camaraderie and collaboration so far in this journey of working together. So welcome, Dean.
No, it's good to be here, Ted. It has been a wild ride.
It has.
And it just to see how God has formed us through the decades. Man, we're old now. And
I'm 50, dude.
Yeah,
You're not far from it.
I'm getting there. I'm getting there. And really the last 30 years,
yeah,
God has been faithful and he's showed up. Yeah. And now we get to look back and see how has God been shaping us for this time, for such a time as this.
For such a time as this. Yeah, extraordinary. Yeah, I think of the first time God captured my attention in a significant way, and I responded to that. It's nearly 30 years ago. It was April of 1991, along the river in Saskatoon, at the end of my third year of engineering. God spoke, and I responded, and that's when my journey took a very different turn, and it came here that fall. So exciting. Yeah, so good.
It's good to look back on those times, because I remember I came straight out of high school to Camrose, Alberta to come to Bible school. And I grew up in Chilliwack, British Columbia. And in Chilliwack, a lot of my friends were going to Bible schools all over the world. And someone came to me, "Dean, I hear you're going to Bible school. Where are you going?" Tony's
Kenya?
going to Australia. Yeah. Someone's going to New Zealand. Someone's going to Hawaii or wherever it is. Where are you going? "I'm going to Camrose, Alberta." "Oh, yeah." Woo-hoo. Like by Banff. No, that's Canmore. Camrose. Where is Camrose? It's in the middle of the prairies. And I came here
It's got a lake.
It does. I came here, and then I remember at the end of my second year, my friends had all come back from Bible school, and they came to visit me in the dorm. And I remember them sitting in my dorm room, and all the guys were piling into the room and were praying together, and just strong community. And many of them were like, we didn't have this. Like this, the strength of community we had here is so strong, and that's been so formative. That's led on this grand adventure, and each step has been an unknown step into something else. Yeah. After my second year Bible school, I started as a youth director. I had no idea what I was doing.
Exactly.
Yeah. I always tell this story. They say, "Okay, Dean, here's your office." I'm like, "An office? Why do I need an office to do youth ministry?"
Because hanging out with youth.
I love Jesus. I love teenagers. Let's do this. And a filing cabinet? Why in the world do you need a filing cabinet? That is so unspiritual. Anyway.
So uncool.
Yeah, that's right.
I remember a similar thing starting out in full-time youth ministry in Edmonton. I remember thinking, man, youth ministry would be amazing if it wasn't for the people. So striking, yeah. So good. Well, I see on your table there a bunch of books that have influenced you, and I'm excited to hear about some of those things that have influenced you. I have a number of questions to uncover discussion around what Jesus is up to in your life. And so you're entering the 4th year as president of CLBI, this discipleship school and network. What is Jesus up to in you that is preparing you for this coming fall in the midst of a pandemic? Here we are.
Yeah. Wow. Great question. As I was reflecting on this, some scripture passages came to mind. One is John 1:14, where Jesus, the Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. Or the Word became flesh and moved into the neighborhood, as
so good.
The message would say. And I recognize that Jesus is saying, trust me. I am here in the midst of this, in what you're doing. And so what he's doing in me is he's helping me to pay attention in the ordinary, to see him here. I grew up always wishing I was somewhere else. I'm the youngest. I wanted to be like my older siblings, or, I could recognize God moving other places, but I had a hard time seeing God moving here, unless other people were pointing him out. And now Jesus is saying, trust me, Dean, I am moving in the midst of you. So his dwelling is here. So I get to see that, and it's going to be a great journey. In Revelation, we read that, behold, I'm making all things new. And Jesus is making things new. And the pandemic is a great reset. It has thrown our world upside down. And a computer analogy which is helpful is when my computer gets all bogged down from all the different programs I put in it, and who knows, it could be viruses, whatever, and it gets to be like just slow as molasses. So every couple years I wipe the entire hard drive, reinstall the operating system, and then I pick and choose certain programs that I actually need, put my files back in, and then it's running like it was brand new again. And what this pandemic is just that. It is an opportunity to reset things. And I believe God is leading us here to do something new in the world. God has asked us and the staff here to be stewards of this organization, which started in 1932 in the midst of the Great Depression, another pandemic earlier there in 1918-19. And that's when the first LBI started, in the midst of the pandemic in Minneapolis.
Yeah.
And here, once again, God is saying, okay, I'm going to do something new. So trust me in it.
Trust me.
And let's see where this is going to go. When I took the call to come here, so that was 3 years ago now. So I had been pastoring a church here in Camrose for 11 years. It was a younger congregation, a recent church plant that was working out of a local elementary school gymnasium. And it was great fun to be there. I'm an evangelist at heart, and I was blessed to see that congregation grow. And they had property since day one, and they were working towards getting their building. And it was funny. I ended up interviewing for this position. the day after we broke ground for our new building. So that's a big story just in itself. But essentially,
Strange timing.
Yeah, what led to that was God getting my attention to say, it was actually when my son Luke graduated from CLBI. He's walking across the stage, and I had said no many times to being open to interviewing the position of president here. It's like, no, it's not a good time. I've got to get this congregation into their building. We're almost there. And when Luke walked across the stage at the graduation, the Spirit stirred within me, and I leaned over to my wife and said, you know what? Maybe I should be more open, to that position of president at CLBI. And that led to this interview. Bizarre timing. And the question that I remember being at a confirmation retreat and just journaling about CLBI, should I be open to this or not? And I asked God, are you done with CLBI? It's okay for it to be done.
Right.
No church or organization should assume they need to exist until Christ returns.
That's right.
Death and resurrection is a healthy thing.
Important cycle.
Yeah, if it needs to die so that our energies can go into birthing something new, then do it. Let's not hang on to it. And as I was praying about that, the Spirit spoke very clearly, and I felt God saying, I'm not done. I'm not done with CLBI. So I was like, well, what do you want to do, God? Mm-hmm. And that started this journey of, it's been an institution, it's been great, but I have bigger plans for it. I want it to become a discipling movement. It's always been a type of movement, but now it needs to shed a layer and shed its chrysalis and get wings and really fly into what the Spirit is doing in the church. And so I'm excited to get to be part of that. And so what God is doing in me, I was reading this morning from Psalm 138. It's a verse there. It says, you have greatly emboldened me.
Emboldened?
Yeah.
I love that.
And it's interesting. But it's not about me, but it is about what God is doing and encouraging me to say, lead, step into the unknown, try out some new things, dream, risk, and let's see where this is going to go. It is a great party, and it's been fun. Yeah.
That's so rich in terms of how do we step into that emboldened place, and I'm struck by kind of my interpretation of the reset and the reinstall, because we all enjoy the efficiency, the quick startup, the startup of Microsoft Word. We don't have to go have a coffee before something starts up, and so efficiency, not wasted time. But that's not the goal. The goal of that reset is so that we are available for things. It's not just the end game is not efficiency, but it's about being available. And when we remove certain things, and pandemics remove things, reset, so that energy can go into being emboldened to see and hear what Jesus is up to.
Yeah. And what's interesting, though, in that pandemic is that when we had to let go of things, it was really hard. It's like I didn't want to let go of things. I had my way of living. I'm like, what? That's got to stop? There was a lot of change starts with a pain in the mind, and there was a lot of pain as we had to let go of a lot of things.
Yeah.
But now we're like, all right, Lord, what do you want to do now? It's really a blank slate. So, okay, Jesus, where do you want to go? And he's saying,
good.
And Jesus is saying, come be with me.
Join.
You're not going to know the end goal. Just walk with me, see what I'm doing. Okay, lead on. So, it's a party. It's good.
Well, I love that you mentioned it's a party. This sense of joyful adventure. There's stuff going on that's not. It's not drab. It's not dragging us down. The stuff that is bulking us up, why we need the reset, is what's dragging us down. And now we're available to see that. I have the privilege tomorrow of talking with Pastor Greg Finke, who wrote the book Joining Jesus on His Mission, and you introduced me to that this last May, and it's been exciting to read through that and see what Jesus is up to in that. You've been aware of his ministry for a number of years now, the Dwelling 114. What drew you to his writing in that sense of joining Jesus on his mission, the excitement and the fun of that adventure, And how did Jesus mess with you? I love that phrase. This time to bring it as an important catalyst and influence in our program year.
I need to tell you a story.
Cool.
Okay. And well, it's
you tell
kind
the
of
best
kinda,
stories, Dean.
It's
You
like
really do.
the chapters of my life, really. And so I have some books here.
The books, yeah.
And I'd like to declare there is no magic curriculum. There's no magic book that you just, here's your 5-step plan, initiate this, and everything is going to go. Because I would love to find that, and I think we all would.
The entrepreneur in us says, I want to find that and make it work.
Yes, and make it work and apply it here. And so what I have before me are influential books on my journey of discipleship.
Cool.
Over the decades. And so here I have Luther's Small Catechism. It's got my sister's name up top, Heidi, and then down below it's got my name. See, I'm the youngest. I never had my own stuff. Hand-me-down catechisms. And so
you don't hear that very often.
Really this is a textbook on discipleship that Martin Luther created in the 1500s because there was huge problems in the church and people didn't know what they believed and
they made it up.
And their lives were not displaying the fruit of the Spirit. And so this teaching he brought in, and it was genius because he took complicated concepts and he boiled them down and packaged them into the Lord's Prayer.
What does this mean?
Yeah, what does this mean?
So
the questions. He asked the ultimate question there. What does this mean? And 10 Commandments and so on. So that was an influential text. And one I've neglected for many years because it's just been ordinary. It's been part of my life. But now I look back on it going, oh, it's like a seed that showed up that I easily dismissed like a mustard seed, but that truth has actually gone on to create great strength in my life. I've got some other texts here too. So you asked about Finke, but we'll get to him.
Yep.
Okay. So this is the Sun Life Strategy book. So this was when I was a youth director back in 1993. I saw a advertisement in Group magazine for a Sun Life training day for youth ministry in Calgary. So I went down to, and a guy named Bill Clem taught that day. October 16th, 1993. This is an old book, but it was very influential. And Bill had a large ministry in Bellingham. It was a congregation of 500 people and a college and career of 800 people, and they had this concept called the cell groups. I'm like, what is that? That was my first introduction to, what is that? This small group
biology.
Ministry. But it was, and this Sun Life Youth Ministry had a way of like, let's learn how Jesus made disciples and what can we learn from that, and how can we apply that to do a better job in our ministries, in our churches, and not just go through the motions. So that it gave some structure, it gave a trajectory of where to go. And as I went, I started learning more about Cell Church. This is Ralph Neighbor. Where do we go from here? In another book, just devoured into that. That's about the Cell Church movement in East Asia.
Yep.
And what else I got here? Dietrich Bonhoeffer, The Cost of Discipleship, another classic. Literature. Yep. C.S. Lewis, Mere Christianity. Eventually, I went to seminary, and I was introduced to one of my profs. His name is Bill Hall, and he was a big writer in the discipleship genre, you could say. And his books on discipleship were very formative. So when I was at Camp Luther, that really shaped how I was creating a discipleship program there. That was fun. And so I've been looking for great materials. And this book here has probably been one. You recognize this book, Ted?
I do, yes.
What am I holding, Ted?
The Living Discipleship book, workbook. Not a textbook, it's a workbook.
This is a workbook.
Fill in the blanks and all that kind of stuff.
This is one of our textbooks when we were students here at CLBI, and our teacher was?
Ronald B. Mann.
Yep, Pastor Ron. And
Bishop Ron.
Yes, Ron was an amazing teacher.
He was, yeah.
And he still is.
Yes, that's right, he still is.
The way he taught it was amazing. It was engaging, and we got into the class. We got into scripture. We got into truths. But then he would ask good questions.
There you go.
And he would tick us off.
I
And he would
remember
push
being
us.
ticked off.
And then we just tried to challenge him back. And,
Yeah.
and it got into, like, when you have those good theological fights in class,
Oh, yes.
and the adrenaline gets pumping, those are the best.
You remember those?
Yeah, you do. And there was a couple years later that they moved to a different prof teaching this class, and it kind of didn't go that well. Once again, it's not the magic curriculum, but Ron was able to learn how Jesus challenged people and asked difficult questions and really got in their face. Like I mentioned, the rich young ruler.
Yes.
So, all right, go sell all your possessions and come and follow me. And that, it just upset his world. And Ron was good at doing that.
Yep.
Jesus would ask the right question. And
He would mess with people.
he would mess with us. So I'm getting towards Finke,
Oh,
this
cool.
book that you recommended, or that I recommended.
Yeah.
And in the last, wait a second, I'll back up. Back in, what year is it? It's 2020 right now? Yeah, in 2013, on my sabbatical, I went to Sheffield, England, and to visit a Anglican Baptist church. That was, I've heard a lot about a discipling movement coming out of there. Once again, I'm looking for books. I'm looking for the magic solution, like, oh, they got it. And I can go and find that secret pattern and bring it, and it'll transform how I do ministry, transform my church. And when I went to Sheffield, England, it was an amazing, ordinary experience where I hung out with a lot of, they had big name speakers, Mike Breen and others, and I just hung out mostly with the youth directors. And I just enjoyed them.
Did you meet Paul McConaughey at that time, or
Yeah.
do you? Yeah.
And
Paul was there then.
Oh, he
Good guy.
taught. I think I met him. Yes, I think I did. But what amazed me from that experience, I met these young adults who were very ordinary people. They weren't like the gifted world-class speakers, but they had a quiet confidence about them, and they would share about how Jesus is working through them in their ministries. And they would start ministries, working with refugees, working with people in poverty, working with a youth ministry, wherever it was, working with a local university students, and big things were happening. And I was like, these are not the leaders that I'm working with in my church. And they're young too. And so that kind of gave me a thirst, kind of like, what's going on there? So
What's going on?
3DM, that was the discipling movement that came out of Sheffield.
Life shaped.
Yeah. And so I was intrigued by that one, and the last few years we've done a lot of work with 3DM here, and they did some gifted work with us online for us to learn how to disciple in what they call a huddle, basically a small group.
Life on life.
You call it cell church or cell groups, huddles, whatever you want. But a triad, there's different, basically Jesus had the 12, he had the 3, Peter, James, and John. He had a small group that he was discipling. And so to actually do that, and 3DM was very formative for us here in the last few years, and it really helped kind of set me free from a lot of the stuff is holding me back.
Right. Part of the reset.
Yeah, part of the reset, really, of letting the gospel transform me.
Yes.
Becoming their beautiful work on identity.
Yep.
And looking at the temptations of Christ, and recognizing how things are tripping me up continually in my life. Their beautiful work on paying attention to the Kairos moment, the kingdom of God breaking into our lives.
Yes.
The time has come.
Yep.
Beautiful work. And they had a lot of strengths that they brought.
Yep.
And they have... but they had some limitations too. We've had some train wrecks here.
Not a magic bullet.
As we've been trying to shift from the Canadian Lutheran Bible Institute, be more of an institution that you come to gain wisdom, information, and make some really good friends, to becoming a discipling movement that will multiply. With that, can we work through 3DM and gain those truths, the pattern? And there were some blow-ups that happened because 3DM had a lot of things where, like, hey, here are some truths, some things to teach, some core concepts. I want you to teach them, replicate them, but don't innovate it. Do it in this way. And we stepped on some cultural landmines, working with Western young adults
Young adults that love to innovate,
They
life hack.
Yes, and
Yeah.
individualism has influenced us so much, unfortunately, in the West. That's why even a lot of these things don't work in Western
That's right,
culture, like
yeah.
cell church. It worked well in Korea.
Yeah.
But here it doesn't work because we're so fiercely independent. And there's some problems with that.
Yep.
And we recognize that when we say to students, okay, here's a teaching, we want you to do it this way, and don't change it, so you can pass it on to others. It just pushed people too hard.
Yeah.
And so we've taken some steps backwards and we said, okay, let's take the strengths of what we've learned from 3DM and the beautiful truths of how the gospel has been setting people free.
Yes.
But how can we take those truths and do it in a way that's going to release people to do ministry and avoid blow-ups? And so Finke is a Lutheran pastor, Greg Finke. I was introduced to him a number of years ago by Matt and Marv Ziprick
Yes.
in Edmonton.
Who we'll have a discussion with in a couple of days, too.
Yeah. And so they've been looking at his material, and there's nothing new under the sun. And Greg says that too. What did he? You spoke to him on the phone. What did he say?
Yeah, I stole most of that stuff from Jesus.
Exactly. That's
perfect.
what all of these things
Exactly.
do.
Yeah.
But he's put some things together which has 5 mission practices. It's got some things. It's genius. It's taken very complicated things and simplified it, but without losing its power. And 3DM's done that. Greg Finke has done that as well. But it's easier to apply to different settings. And what we're doing is we're taking some of the Greg Finke material, joining Jesus on his mission. What is Jesus up to? And in 3DM, the Learning Circle, that has been an incredible tool that has been so transformative. Yes. As we're bringing those together, and we're getting some traction.
Very much so.
And we're seeing some young adults saying, I can do this. They're getting more confident in what God is doing. For years, I've taught leading a small group Bible study here at CLBI. And this year, each year I kind of redo the class that I'm teaching. And if I look at all the hundreds of students I've taught over the years, how many of them have gone out to lead Bible studies, small group Bible studies? It's probably under 10%, unless they worked at a camp.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm just asking that. It's like, why? Because so much of the focus is on them.
Yep.
I have to be the wise sage. I have to say the right word that's going to inspire. And it's really self-confidence, and it's tough. Now, in this material, and where Jesus is leading us to a place to be more God-confident than self-confident, to be like Martin Luther, to come to a group of people and say, well, what does this mean? And just to wait in the silence, to wait until they start paying attention. It's not just about learning new facts, new information, but seeing how the Spirit is breaking into my life, how Jesus is showing up in where I'm at, in my mess. And He's leading me to the cross.
Amen.
He's leading me to stand taller. He's leading me to face my temptations.
Be emboldened.
Yes. That's awesome.
That is awesome.
So Greg Finke?
It's good stuff.
Yeah, it's fun. So, but he's part of a collection.
Yeah, stepping stones, shaping us constantly. Yeah, there is no such thing as a magic bullet, so to speak. It is this journey of being shaped, and God getting our attention. That's the hugest part of this. Yeah, you mentioned just a couple minutes ago with regards to students saying, "I can do this. I can be quiet and listen and let the Holy Spirit do what the Holy Spirit does. I can do that." And it's exciting. And we just finished the first season section of the 72 online discipling network that has been God's vision planted in you, that has been some interesting journey along the way. Let's talk a little bit about that as we kind of close our time here. We could talk for an hour easily. But the 72 online gathering, as we debrief our experience over these last 3 months with this, it's been extraordinary. But how did God plant that vision, idea in you? And what are some stories that you see Jesus is doing something in this that is like, wow.
Oh, I have so much to share.
I know you
so
do.
I'll try to bring it closer together. And
Maybe we can do a part two.
There is. And God has been doing beautiful things in us. As we've been learning to disciple one another, we've seen me, set free by the gospel.
Yeah.
To stand victorious and complete in Christ and not worry what other people think, not worry about my failures. It's not a test anymore. I don't have to prove myself. I can just be at peace in Christ. And I've been wanting to see that in our students and them to be able to disciple others. That's been the goal, the challenge. But how do we do that? CLBI has been a place where people have come to, they were discipled, and then they moved on with their life. So, and some people, they tried to replicate what we learned here, but then...
or they can't find it.
Yeah, they can't find it, they can't replicate it, and it just kind of falls flat, and there's beautiful success stories, but some just like, I don't know, it was great, it was fun. Then I moved on and went back to my ordinary life. And so my call here I've mentioned is to help this become a movement. Is where we're going. And so that's been, God, how is this going to work? And so it's interesting. I'm a tech geek. So I've always loved harnessing technology to do new things. When the internet came out and developing websites and those things. So yeah, it's been fun. And just as Martin Luther harnessed the power of the printing press, like that little catechism.
Yes.
Okay.
Huge.
It was the disruptive technology of the printing press that made that so widespread. Yep. And so 2 years ago, in our discipleship journey, we had a coach, a discipling coach, and they were using Zoom, which everyone knows what that is now. But 2 years ago, we're like, oh, what's this? Oh,
6 months ago, nobody knew what it was.
This is cool. And so we've been using that for a couple years, and it was introduced to us. And I'm like, for one, discipling online was powerful. The Spirit was setting me free using a computer screen. I'm like, this is amazing. I didn't think this was possible.
Right.
And then I started playing with the technology in Zoom, just playing around with it.
Breakout rooms.
Yeah, and I discovered breakout rooms. And even the coach I was working with, they didn't know what to do with those things. And so a year ago, Ted, we did some follow-up with our students because we wanted to support. Yeah, we disciple them here and we say, okay, guys, go do this. You're like, I'm not ready to do that. I can't. Well, how can we support them? How can we follow through with our students to support them as they return to maybe a really small church? They might be the only young adult there.
Or a difficult setting.
Yeah, because majority of the churches in the world are tiny, under 100 people.
Yep.
That is the majority. That is ordinary. And we want to equip them to go back there to help disciple and to change the culture and to support their pastors. And so we used Zoom a year ago. Said, okay, guys, we're going to gather online using Zoom. They were like, what's this? Okay, we'll try it. And then we came and we did a little
You're
Devo.
muted. You're muted.
Yeah, we did a little Devo. And then we told them all to come with a kairos, how is God breaking into your life?
Getting your attention, breaking in.
Yeah, pay attention. How is God getting your attention? They came with that every week. And then we went into breakout rooms and they just shared. And it was vulnerable, it was powerful, and we had our students coming back to us saying, Dean, I was skeptical, but that was significant.
Yep.
It worked. And we thought, we're on to something here. Mm-hmm. And so that was a year ago. And then we started looking at, okay, if we're going to become a movement, we're always going to have our local campus here. We're a discipleship school of like 35 students, and we don't want to become massive. We want to stay that under 50. And beautiful things are happening here, but we need to develop a new program that can unleash the power of these students. And Tamara McInnes, our impact director, she said, Dean, we've been living in Luke 10, the sending out of the 72, all year long. It's been very formative. It's been the lens that we've been looking through to see how Jesus is at work among us as he sends us out. What about calling it 72? I'm like,
that was Tamara's idea?
That was Tamara.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that.
Sitting in the cafeteria having
so
coffee.
Good. Tamara, you're amazing.
After prayer time. And I'm like, you know what? That's so weird that that can work.
Yep.
And so we birthed the 72. And last fall, so fall of 2019, I started training alumni to do online discipleship groups. And we trained up a bunch of them in November, December, January, and at the end of January, we're going to launch this thing. January 2020, a very significant month, right?
Yeah.
The last month of Ordinary.
The last
and
month of
we were
Ordinary.
ready to launch it. We had spread word of what we're doing far and wide across North America.
Lots of interest.
Lots of interest. Pastors excited about the vision of what we're doing to equip people in their churches. See, we were finally going to minister to people that may never come to CLBI. We want to give away our best for free because we are about discipleship. And we know God will provide the students we need. But even if they can't come, we still want to pour into them.
Yeah.
And no
We
matter
love
what
them.
age there are too, like different
Yes.
ages. And we had it all ready. We're going to launch. We were going to do a 6-week thing or 8-week, and we're just going to look at our identity in Christ. It's going to be great. We were ready. We were pumped. And we had 0 people register for it. It was the best failure of my life.
So awesome.
It was awesome. And I told my group when we met, we just laughed. I'm so glad we didn't get 1 person because that would have been awkward. But in fact, we had 0 follow through it. We had so much interest. All of our leaders, they were talking to people and everyone was like, sounds cool, but you want me to share about how God is showing up in my life? That's pretty vulnerable. You want me to do it with people that I don't know that well? And you want me to do it online? What is this Zoom thing? I don't understand. No thanks. A lot of interest, but no one committed. But the amazing thing,
this
this is cool
good.
that we're trying to
glad you're talking
pay
about
attention to
Yes.
what God is doing. That all of the
them.
leaders came and said that night, Dean, don't give up. God is doing something new here. This is significant. Transformation is happening in my life as I recognize Jesus showing up in my ordinary situation, and I'm growing. Don't give up. I went, okay, well, let's pray, and let's wait on the Lord, and let's meet back in a couple of weeks. This is end of January 2020.
Yep.
Well, I think something happened in February.
Yep.
Yeah. And so COVID-19.
Yeah.
And then
We didn't think it was going to get to us.
No, it was still
in
it was
February.
happening.
We thought
Yeah.
it was staying over somewhere else.
Yes.
But
that's
it was
right.
happening.
It was happening and it was coming.
was coming.
And so a month later, I gathered my leaders back together after the world had fallen apart. And we came back together laughing, saying, we're ready. We're already trained. Let's do this. And we thought, okay, let's just launch this baby. And okay, let's just make it easy. Just have people just come, kick the tires, see if they like it. And it's going to be like, it felt like the disciples after they were, the new believers scattered from Jerusalem. They're just, as they went, they shared the gospel. And we were just going to figure it out as we went. And that's what we did. So we launched it. And the first time we had I think we had around 72 people show up.
Something. It was close.
Yeah.
It wasn't quite because
Yeah.
I think we were thinking, what if there's 72? Then nobody else can come.
Yeah, we've had over 72 kick the tires.
Yeah.
And we did it. We made these groups, and we were trying to figure out the technology as we went. And now we've just finished last night our 12th time, and we've wrapped up this season. And it was great. And so we came together. We did some teaching. We shared testimonies. We had people from all over the world come.
Nepal even.
And different ages,
Yep.
intergenerational. And then
My group was quite intergenerational.
Yeah. So we got together for, a large group for 35 minutes, 40 minutes, and then we broke into D groups. And then we met every week and they shared. And it was great. But the biggest win was last night. After we were done, the leaders gathered together. Some of us have been together since November. And they went, God is good. And I am more confident in what God is doing. I see Jesus showing up. Before I was hesitant. We had many of those leaders we had heard, and we're in the classroom of CLBI right now. We've heard those actual students say, I can't do it. I can't do it. No way, I can't do that.
I can't teach people that are older than me.
I can't teach people that are younger than me, and then we had them actually teach others,
And really well.
And others say, I can do this because God is showing up. I'm confident in God more than I am in myself. Well, God is in me. Yeah. And others said, what we've done here, this framework has been like the training wheels. There's been enough support so I can go and I can try this, but I know after we lead our discipleship group and we meet up as leaders afterwards, we'll talk about what went well and what was awkward and where we failed, and we had ideas and we laughed and we did life together. And they're like, they were standing up. And it was like those young adults I met in Sheffield, England. They were like, all right, this is what I'm doing. I'm excited about the fall. I'm excited to relaunch this. Yeah. And now we have, we're looking at getting a church to partner with us from the lower mainland of British Columbia, that we want to train leaders there so that we can launch discipleship groups in their church as well. The Spirit is at work. What's Jesus up to, Ted?
Yeah.
Goodness.
It's an extraordinary amount. And what I love, too, and I'll kind of just note this as we close, which is so extraordinary and what does really embolden us to pay attention, to become available, is this sense of we don't become failures when we experience failure. That's not our identity. And that allows us to be emboldened, to go on adventures, to risk, to try things. And that really is the call of discipleship, right? Jesus, he sent them to do crazy things sometimes. And it didn't go well, but they didn't become failures. And I love that about the general sense of your leadership here at CLBI, and the general sense of the atmosphere is to be able to fail well because we see more and more of what God is up to in all of that. It's exciting.
Yeah. You only fail if it's a test. Is this a test to prove myself of who I am?
To prove myself, that's exactly
But when
right.
Jesus has already declared in my baptism that I have died and risen with him, I have been crucified with Christ, and it's no longer Christ who lives, but Christ who lives within me. I am complete in Christ. I am more than a conqueror. Like that's my identity.
And
that's
over
my
and over
reality.
again it says that.
Yeah, and so it's like, is this a test? No. Jesus has already done all that. Sure, there's going to be hiccups. Sure, there's going to be things that didn't go the way we wanted.
And they show us more of what needs to happen.
But, we look at Scripture, we look at Moses, David, Peter, and Jesus
James
comes
and John.
alongside them and says, do you love me, Peter? Yeah, I do. Well, feed my sheep. Like, Jesus is faithful to show up in every aspect of our lives. And when we believe that, it's not just in the pastor's life or the missionary or whatever hip happening church that is. When God shows up in my ordinary situation, when I believe that, and Jesus is waiting for us to wake up and to see him. And then when we do wake up, he says, all right, you ready? Let's go.
Let's go. And as you go, here's what I'm up to.
Yes.
And we see that and uncover that as we watch him through the gospel narratives and experience him and put that into practice in the various things we do here and through the 72 online discipling network. It's extraordinary. Thanks so much, Dean, for unpacking this. And we could continue. I know we could. And we will have a part 2, no question. But I'm so thankful as we look at what it means to tell stories, uncover stories of what Jesus is up to so that we can join him on his mission. So thank you for listening to this second series of the 72 podcast here at CLBI. And we invite you to respond in any way with questions, thoughts, ideas. Send those to podcast@clbi.edu. And look forward to our second episode in this second series, which will be with Pastor Greg Finke talking about joining Jesus on his mission. And I'm excited about that.
And I want to give an invitation.
Yes.
So go to the72.ca. And you'll see the remnants of what we just finished, our first experiment. Actually, the second experiment. The first one failed and flopped.
First one uncovered what we need to do next.
That's right. And so we are going to launch again this fall. And do you want to be a part of this?
Yes.
Listeners. And I ask you this. Pray about what Jesus wants to do in you and around you. And is there someone else in your in your sphere of influence. Might be from your church, might be a neighbor, might be from a different church. Another believer might be someone who's still just kicking the tires of what Christianity is about, but they want to know more. And just someone that you can walk with and to join us in the fall. And we want to equip you, walk with you, and we want to see the Spirit do great things in your midst. So, we'll put a thing on there. You can sign up for more information. So,
Perfect.
thank you.
Thanks so much, Dean. Thanks for listening. Bless you, friends. See you again.
Thanks for listening to the 72 podcast, presented by CLBI. Stay up to date with the newest episodes and subscribe today. For more information, check out the72.ca or email us at podcast@clbi.edu. We'd love to hear from you. Until next time, live as disciples and be the 72.